This is just declassified footage showing Israeli Special Operations Forces conducting a raid deep inside Syrian territory while the Assad regime was still in power. So this footage that just came out today, January 2nd, 2025, was from an operation on September 28th, 2024. So that was just a couple days before HTS kicked off their operations in northern Syria that would eventually take Aleppo and then Damascus, leading to the fall of the Assad regime. So what you're seeing here took place inside of regime-controlled territory before Assad was on his way out, which is notable in a lot of ways. Now, before diving into the footage that was just released by Israel, I want to give you an idea of where this raid took place, because what we've seen in recent weeks is a push from Israeli forces kind of into the Golan area, a little bit further into Syrian territory down here. That's not where this operation was conducted. Instead, it was in Masyaf, M-A-S-Y-A-F. My apologies for the pronunciation, but it's the area marked here on the map. So, that means Israeli forces either have to move across Lebanon, or maybe they came in from the sea, right? If they come in from the sea, then we're talking about a distance of, 25 miles or so inland from the coast. But what's notable here, and we'll go all the way back down to Israel to give you an idea, we're talking 140 or so miles from northern Israel. Significant operation in a lot of ways. Something notable here, however, is right here on the screen, we have Tartus. That's the location of the Russian naval base on the Mediterranean. Significant Russian military presence there. And the other large Russian military presence in Syria is just up north here in Latakia. So the area that Israel carried out this special forces raid was right between the two largest Russian military presences in Syria. It's unclear at this point if Russia knew that was happening, or if there was some sort of, hard to imagine, there was a coordination between Israel and Russia to allow this to go down. But either way, major Israeli special operations raid right between Russian military bases in Syria. All right, now diving into the footage, and I will link in the description below each one of the original sources for these videos. You can go check them out if interested. What you're seeing here are elements of the Shaldog unit, and various Israeli sources at this point say that around 100 commandos were used in this raid. Shaldog is part of the Israeli Air Force. It's one of their most elite special operations forces. They say they were all carried a series of explosive charges that you'll see here in a second, used to destroy this underground Syrian missile manufacturing site, which likely had some pretty significant Iranian components to it, right? Whether it was Iranian oversight in building it, the manufacture, or the design of those munitions that were in the facility. Now, this is one of the more interesting pieces here. We're going to see Israeli forces on the ground in direct fire engagements with Syrian military personnel. So at this point in the conflict, again, end of September 2024, we're talking about these are Assad regime forces that they're fighting and possibly killing. I didn't see anything in terms of casualty roll-ups at this point, but hard to imagine that this entire facility was just completely empty. So here we've got the Israeli Special Operations Forces moving through the underground network. They mentioned that they had tried to hit this facility or considered destroying this facility with airstrikes. Didn't go into why they didn't. My guess is it was probably far enough below ground that maybe Israel doesn't have the ability to effectively destroy this entire thing, right? Maybe they could cave in certain aspects, entrances to it, but if enough of the facility is underground, it does become very, very challenging to actually destroy it with a long-range precision strike. Now, again, I want to mention that I didn't see any personnel throughout this entire video, enemy personnel or civilians at all. Not clear if there were guards at the facilities or people that they captured and pulled out to interrogate, anything like that. But what we are seeing is that there's a lot of aircraft overhead providing close air support, providing reconnaissance in the area, which kind of goes back to the question earlier about how much did Russia actually know about this, or were they able to stop it? Again, you're talking very close to some of the largest Russian military bases in Syria, some of the largest Russian military bases outside of Russia itself. It's interesting that Israel is able to pull off this significant of an operation kind of in Russia's shadow without them noticing at all, or maybe unable to do anything. So we do have a handful of clips here kind of from start, beginning, and end of this operation. They have a nice clip here that I think kind of shows the location, again, kind of an overlay of where this raid took place. And you'll see them kind of zoom in here to western Syria, if you will, and pull up the Mysaf base here. It looks like that's kind of on the southwest corner. Again, Israel was adamant that they'd been studying this for some time, knew exactly what was here. It was just a matter of getting to the facility. So you can see it here, kind of built into the side of the mountain. And a lot of this footage matches kind of one for one with the helmet cam footage that we're seeing, and there's going to be more of that here in a second from the Israeli forces on the ground. Kind of wish we had this, like this exact thing for some of the Hamas tunnels, or more Hamas than Hezbollah tunnels, but it would have been nice to see this exact one-to-one. You're actually going to see that room here in a second. It's going to line up exactly with some of the helmet cam footage. Now, this could have been something pieced together after the fact as well, not discounting that. But either way, I think this kind of helps to visualize what they were actually going after and the target inside of Syria. So here we have the troops on ground. Again, some of this footage repeats itself. These are different clips released by Israel, but some of the components within each are copies. But we've got the Israeli forces on the ground moving into the compound. Don't know what caused that vehicle to go up in flames, right? Could have been an airstrike beforehand or part of the fighting on ground. But throughout this whole entry to the facility, there was a fair amount of gunfire on the outside. Now, the Israeli press release said that all of these soldiers carried some degree of explosive charges, and then at the end of the operation, we do have some clips of that. They end up planting these charges throughout this underground facility. Based off the size of the explosion, I wouldn't say the entire facility was destroyed, but it's likely that Israel was able to bring enough boom in there to at least destroy some of the more sensitive locations. God, a ton of warfare is so terrifying, man. I don't know if this is, I guess, better than some of those Hamas tunnels where you're just kind of right on top of each other and you can hardly see around corners, but there's just nowhere to go when you get underground like this. So we're seeing some of the missile manufacturing facilities here, and again, Israel was able to pull through some of these file cabinets, probably gathered a lot of really significant intelligence from here. My guess is, again, probably a lot of ties going back to Iran, given the close ties between Assad and his backers in Tehran, and how much of the missile technology kind of mirrors one-to-one what's coming out of Iran. Israel didn't mention the timing of this raid. It is interesting because it was just a couple days before HTS kicked off their operations that would lead to the fall of the Assad regime. It seems like this is more something that, or you can understand why Israel would want to do this following the fall of the Assad regime, wanting to get in there and secure some of these weapons facilities, making sure they don't fall into the wrong hands. But in this case, it was before that even happened. So this had to have been something they were planning for some time. Notably, this is after the Hezbollah ceasefire, or right about the same time the Hezbollah ceasefire went into effect, and that aspect of the war was kind of winding down, so it likely freed up some maneuver and intelligence assets to carry out this operation. So again, this is part of that video that we saw just a second ago in that kind of 3D rendering, and it doesn't look like these guys stayed on the ground very long, right? They were in there, understandably so. They were in there pretty quickly, moved to the facility, recovered what they could, evacuated via helicopter, and then we started to see a lot of these charges go off, destroying large chunks of that underground facility. Again, right next to some pretty large Russian bases in the area. And we'll kind of wrap up here with some of the footage showing the detonations as Israeli forces evac the area or exfil the area. But again, all of this footage will be linked in the description below if you want to check it out. Just thought it was worth running through. Again, a pretty significant special operations raid deep inside of Syrian territory while the Assad regime was still in power. It's pretty impressive stuff by Israel. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.